Hi, everyone. This is Kerristen. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Relocate Podcast. So, today is going to be a doozy. I'm very excited to have the lovely Kiori, also known as KJ, on the podcast with us today. KJ, she is actually located right now in Peru. She relocated from the Seattle, Washington area of the States. She is a pole fitness instructor. She's a dancer. She likes doing photography. Um, Let me know if I missed out anything. She has dogs. Um, so she loves pets, team dog all the way. Um, and she's also been in the military. She has a lot of experience under her belt with doing a lot of things. But right now we are going to talk about, actually talk about a lot. But is there anything else? Where are you from? Because I don't think I
Yeah,
even got that.
yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. And originally, I was born in Alaska. I've lived all over thanks to the military and thanks to my family loving the consistency of change. Before I lived in Washington, I actually spent the last like 10 or 12 years of my life living in Texas as well. So my family lives in
Yeah.
San Antonio. Yep, my family lives in San Antonio. And that's where my, roots back home are now. And then when I joined the military, yeah, I moved all around Oklahoma, Washington, Maryland, back to Texas, back to Washington. So relocating from Washington now. And yeah, it's been a wild ride the whole time.
Oh my goodness. You're the first person I've ever met from from Alaska. How long were you there
It's,
for? That's crazy.
I was born there in 93 and lived there till I was about 15 years old. And yeah, my mom just like has moved all around. She loves change. She hates being in the same place for very long. And her living in the same house that she's lived in for as long as she lives has now is such a like shock to me. But she decided when I was about 14, 15, like I can't stand the cold anymore. I'm tired of shoveling the driveway. I don't want to have to be stuck in the house 6 months out of the year. I want sunshine in my life. So we moved to Texas, um, uprooted our whole family from the area that we were living in. And we moved to San Antonio, where my sister was stationed when she was in the Air Force. And my family's been there ever since. So it's been kind of a full circle experience for us. My father was originally born in San Antonio, excuse me, born in Japan, lived in San Antonio almost all his life until he was a grown adult. And then him and my mother met in Alaska. And so when we moved back to Texas, my father couldn't have been more thrilled about going back home, being with friends and family there, and getting to experience um, the space that had helped him grow so much as a child. So seeing that for his kids, I think was something that really impacted him in a beautiful way, and therefore like impacted us in such a great way because we got to experience this place in such a different way than if you're somebody who's experiencing it for the first time as a stranger to that land. Um, and I think there's a sense of familiarity that we gain from him being in that space for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, you definitely been to a lot of places.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're not missing out on too much in Alaska. I mean, it's a great place to go in the summer. I think if you're somebody who loves the outdoors, like go in the summertime, experience it once in your life, go see the mountains, go see the glaciers. Um, what one of the big reasons we ended up leaving as a child was just the lack of opportunity and the distance away from just about everything else in the US, it's a very closed off community in terms of just as its accessibility to other places, like I said, in the US. And therefore, people kind of get stuck there if they don't leave. So it's good to branch out, good to visit. But in my opinion, it's not the greatest place to stay. Yeah.
I want to go for the seafood. That's it.
That part.
I just want the
Yes.
crab legs. That's it. Give me the
Yes,
crab
please
legs.
do get you some food, travel and eat that food because that's all I travel for these days anymore is just food and the experience.
I
Yeah,
know
you'll
that's
get some
right.
good food up there.
Okay. Um, so I did some digging on you just a little bit. And you know what's crazy? Like I kind of love full circle moments because I went to Seattle in October of
Okay.
2024, like toward like around Halloween time.
Okay.
And I planned a birthday trip. Every year I do something fun for my birthday, and I have like all my best friends come with me and decided on Seattle. And I just wanted to do things a little differently from what we normally do. And I wanted to try like a pole class, and I found you as I was
Oh,
doing my research. But the only reason I didn't sign us up for the class, I think it was because like the timing of like people getting into town and it just didn't align. I probably should have just went by myself. But
that's okay.
now that I think about it, I don't even know if I would have made it because my flight got really delayed.
Oh no.
All the toilets on the plane had maintenance issues except for one. So I was just sitting there and then sitting there
You're
for
like, please
hours
let me
like,
off of this flight.
right, like am I ever gonna leave Texas? Like this is crazy. Like
Ugh,
all the toilets. So,
right.
um
And you definitely don't want to fly with one toilet for 4.5, 5 hours. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
right. So that's how I got familiar with you, but then I kind of saw you abruptly left Seattle like 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, and I'm just like, dang, no warning, just bye. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
definitely kept it very quiet on my social media, because, to be honest, we had been planning to leave the country for years. I mean, this transition has been something that we've really worked hard for over the last few years. And it just seemed like every time we got a little bit closer, there was something else that came up. So our timeline, we weren't 100% sure of, you know. We just knew we were going to leave. We knew all the characteristics in the place that we wanted. And we didn't have a specific spot in mind. So I really only shared this with my immediate community, with my family, with the people that I was sharing my life with in real life. And also because, you know, with my experience working in clubs, working in social media, you know, there's some people out there that really try to keep tabs on us. And I really just didn't want people to know where we were going, um, for the sake of personal privacy and safety. So, yeah, it's funny you say that because a lot of the community that I have online, they felt like, whoa, where is this coming from? But on the back end for us, it was years in the making. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and part of the push, I think, for us, I mean, there's many reasons. Like, I think with any big decision in life, you kind of have a vision of what you want, and maybe there's many reasons why you don't do it right away. Maybe you're too afraid, maybe you have attachments to a job, family, all of these things. And for me, it was my attachment to my community. I have a really supportive community back in Seattle. So supportive that like I will travel now, even now, to go do events there and participate in community happenings there. And I really value the community that I have there. This space in Washington was a place that I felt really attached to because of my personal growth in this area. And then also, I was a homeowner. You know, I had a house in Washington that I felt a little bit attached to. And slowly but surely, I just kind of started shedding these attachments, these layers of attachment to different things that were maybe good for me and helpful at a time, but didn't quite serve me in this season of my life. And I just knew I wanted something different than what I was experiencing. And you've been to Seattle. I'm sure you understand it's far more expensive to be in Seattle than it is to be in South Texas or most places in the United States. And when I was dancing in the clubs and teaching in the studios, I made it a point to save and put myself in a position where I could leave that place and go somewhere where my cost of living didn't also cost me my livelihood.
Mhm.
And so my partner and I sat down and I was like, I think I'm finally ready to sell my house. You know, my partner is living with me in my home, and he and I just kind of come to this point where we were starting to see the community of Seattle change so drastically. When I moved there first in 2011, 2012, it was a very different community than it is now. I mean, Seattle in its current state is really struggling. A lot of the US is really struggling with individuals who are self-medicating, and suffering from addiction, suffering from being houseless, and these are super unfortunate things that have happened because of many different reasons, right? But one of the big ones is just the process of a lack of community, really, and a lack of spiritual well-being. And so we sat down and we wrote a list of all the things that we really wanted in a new place. And our first instinct was to move somewhere in the US for a little bit. We thought, well, maybe we don't want to transition right out of the United States right away. Maybe that's kind of dramatic. And we started looking everywhere for a place in the United States that had all of these things that we really wanted, that we could both agree on. And like, long story short, there just wasn't the place for us there. I mean, the closest that we could get was either going back to Texas, or somewhere in Florida. We wanted to have affordable housing. We wanted to have affordable luxury, what felt like luxury to us. And what I mean by luxury isn't the most expensive. For us, it means the best quality for the price we can afford, and we wanted that affordable version of luxury. We wanted to have community around us, people of color around us. That was another big thing. Seattle, there is a large BIPOC community, but the Black community specifically is rather small. And we actually have a friend who works in the statistics and demographics department for UW, conducting research in the area. And this individual told us that 98% of the Black population lives within 2 square miles of each other in Seattle. And that like statistic just really like hit me. I'm like, we're not spread out in this area. We're not intermingled within other areas of the community. And it felt really closed off for that reason. It didn't feel very accessible. And we were actually outside of Seattle in the Tacoma area. And there is definitely a larger BIPOC population. I feel that's more accessible to us in that area. But yeah, the community just really started to shift. And I was starting to notice, I had friends who were also homeowners who didn't have a lot of rights over their house. Like, people were setting up encampments in front of their homes. People were robbing their cars, breaking into their houses. And the nature of the climate there is such that there isn't a ton of repercussion, because people also understand that the people who are doing these things are in need. And Seattle is a very forgiving community when it comes to things like that, because they understand the humanity of it all. Like, these people are in situations that they don't necessarily ask for. And for us as homeowners, we're experiencing a lot of privilege. It is a very big privilege to be able to own a home, to be able to sell it, and utilize those funds in a way that feels liberating for us. And so I'm not the type of individual who is going to try and force my way of living onto someone else. So it didn't feel like the right answer to try and like fight that. It felt like, okay, well, where can I go where my ways of living are aligned with the individuals who are already there? And even more so in terms of holistic living and spiritual exploration, so that was a big part for us. And we just looked everywhere. We couldn't find it. And we had no clue where we would go. We started looking at other areas of the world, and Southeast Asia was really calling to me specifically. I've lived in Bali for a little while, and that area has definitely been quite gentrified now over time. But the people there, the people that are indigenous to that land, and the people that visit, they have a very different perspective on spirituality. In America, we view spirituality as being aligned typically with a religious organization or one specific way of believing. Or we also see it as like crystals and Palo Santos and sage, right? So there's a very almost, I don't want to say narrow mind because people are quite open, but there's a very specific view people have of spirituality. And quite often in my experience, it's led to like people putting you in containers. And for me, I believe in value in all ways of living. I really believe in finding your own sense of spirituality, your own connection with whatever you call it, God, the universe, Allah, whatever it is to you. Because I believe we're all actually talking about the same thing. It's just how we choose to express. And when we started looking, that area really called to us. And we very quickly found out it was a hard no because of our 3 dogs that we were like, we have to bring these animals with us. We are committed to these animals and we really want to follow through on that commitment. And so, yeah, it just felt like a hard no. And we happened to be getting ready to go on a retreat that was here in Peru. We have a friend, his name's Brother B. He's an amazing human, really conscious, really self-aware, and really great at just opening space for other individuals. He's from New Jersey. And he invited us here for this retreat. And as we started talking more and more with him, we realized, like, I think this place has everything on our list, minus consistently warm weather. So at that point, it was like, what are you willing to give up to get as close to your dream as you possibly can get? And if the warm weather is like the one thing that we have to do a little sacrificing on, like, I'm willing to explore that for the sake of having accessibility to the life I envision for myself and the life I feel I've worked hard enough to deserve. And yeah, we heard so many people say, oh yeah, I bought a round trip ticket, went to Peru and left, came back home and decided I was going to move back there 6 months later. We'd heard this story. I've heard this story more times than I can count. And it's consistent across the board for almost every person that we meet. Like, I came here and I just got stuck here. Like the mountains, they suck you in here. And my partner and I were looking at each other like, a hard head makes a soft ass, excuse me. But, we are not about to be hard headed. We're just going to book the one way. And that way we don't have to pay double and end up getting hurt in the long run. So we booked that one way flight. And yeah, that was just the bare minimum start of the journey. That wasn't even like the hardest part of it all. But we're here now and it's just honestly the most indescribable experience. Yeah.
You touch bases on having to, in the process of making this decision of moving out of the States. You spoke on unlearning and just shutting down like certain attachments that you've had to Seattle, that you may have had to living in the US. How exactly did you address those ideals and values that were instilled? Because I'm gonna touch bases on, when I did the intro, I mentioned like you served in the military, like you basically have like that quote unquote American dream that I got a lot to say about it,
Yeah.
but you basically, like, to a lot of people, like, on paper it looks like the American dream,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
you sound like you've gotten to a point where you're just like, but is it really like
Yeah. First of all, thank you for saying that. Because I honestly feel like a hot mess 90% of the time. So to hear someone say I seem like the American dream, um, my like response to that, like, first would be like, is that the same for everyone, right? Because so many of us have this vision of what the American dream can be, and I've been very fortunate in my life, as a human, let alone as a biracial individual in America, in the world. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of opportunity. I think a lot of that stems from me being light skinned. Like, I'm not seen the same way as somebody who is a darker complexion as me, or than me, excuse me. And I recognize that about myself, and that's something that has been a really interesting experience to live through, because there's always the conversation of you're never black enough for this, or you're never white enough for this as a mixed person. But I've had so many experiences that have put me in a position of abundance throughout my entire life, and simultaneously experiencing struggle alongside of all of that abundance. Joining the military for me was a decision out of necessity, not desire. I come from a home, I come from a family that is low income. I come from a family that my parents were not educated until much later in their life. And I saw the struggle that my parents had to endure in order to put food on the table, in order for my mother to support 4 children as a single parent, in order for my father to overcome a lot of the barriers in his life as a Black man, and just as a human in general, dealing with economic struggle, spiritual struggle. Both my parents overcoming addiction to drugs and alcohol. And so I saw those things unfolding for them in their life, and I did not want those same things for myself. I also saw some of the benefits of what the military had done for people in my life. My sister is a veteran, my mother is a veteran, my stepfather is a veteran. And for me, that felt like the easiest way to access the life that I felt I needed to, in order to overcome some of those things that had been kind of generationally holding us back. And so, yeah, I joined the military, and the day after I graduated basic training, my brother and sister died in a car accident. And this experience for me was like hugely eye-opening to understand that we can always, like, duality is in every experience we have, because simultaneously I had just completed one of the hardest things I'd ever done in my life. And to lose them, and to be proud of what I had experienced and done at the same time, it put me in this place where I just understood that life can always be as sweet as you perceive it. And it really encouraged me to work harder, because I understood that for a long time before they passed away, I was just living this life that other people had expected me to live. And so when I joined the military, I made a promise to myself that I was going to utilize that opportunity as a stepping stone to get myself to a better place. So I joined, I did my time in the military. And when I got out of the military, I immediately went to college. And I used every single dollar somebody would give me to go to school for free. Every single dollar you could find. I'm still trying to find free money to go to school as a veteran, and that also, like, having that is a privilege that, that I've worked for and earned, but it's still a privilege because some people don't ever get that opportunity. And I recognize that too. And when I went to school, that was another opportunity for me to say, like, how can I level up my experience, And so I finished my degree. My degree is in communications with a concentration in public relations, and I specialize specifically in marketing, branding, anything that has to do with communicating your personal brand and who you are as an individual or business to the public. And it also helped me to learn a lot about people and learn how to connect with them. And I got my first job out of college working at, honestly, working as a daycare provider, doing something completely different, Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people experience this. We get our degree and then we're like either struggling to find the exact position that we really want, or maybe it isn't available to us. And so, yeah, I worked a lot of random jobs that had nothing to do with my schooling. I worked as a daycare provider. I worked at Dick's Sporting Goods. I've worked at all kinds of like retail and fast food places, you know. And simultaneously at this time, I was going through my second marriage. And finally, I landed this job that I had worked so hard to acquire. And it was working as I was at the time I was working in the VA, and I had got a job working as the public affairs specialist for the Department of the Army. And I had tried out for this job so many times. I had input so many applications, gone through so many interviews, and every single time, someone who was more qualified just happened to get the job. And finally, my turn was up. I was so excited for this job. I started working in this job in late 2018, early 2019. And then 2020 hit and we had COVID. And many people, like, I don't think anyone had a good year that year. You know, this is not to say that I was like under some kind of like spell that nobody else had to experience. All of us had a terrible year that year. We were all going through things. And I was working in this job that I thought was my dream job. And I was miserable because I was working overtime, working all the way through COVID, not being appreciated. I was the only person in the entire Army with that specific job title. And there was a lot of pressure to make this something that was absolutely unbelievable so other people could have the opportunity to access the same job title, and that they would open up more spaces for this job. And I'm working around, at 26 years old, I'm working around people who have been in the military 30, 40 years, people who have been in their job positions 40, 50 years, you know, and I'm learning about myself still, let alone learning about all these other people and how to navigate the corporate environment as a young adult. And I was just miserable. You know, my work environment didn't feel like a community. And I truly felt that I was surrounding myself with individuals who weren't satisfied with their own quality of life. So I went on a vacation, and at this time I was on a vacation with the person who's now my partner. At this time they were just my friend. Telling them, like, I'm so miserable here. I hate what I'm doing. But I feel like I can't leave because I feel like I owe it to myself. I feel like I owe it to other Black women to show up in this position that I've been given the opportunity to achieve or excel in. And I am a high ranking individual at a young age. I'm making great money. And that was a really huge attachment for me, making the good money that none of my peers were making. My partner, my friend at the time, looked at me and he said, "How much is your soul worth?"
Ooh.
And I was like, "Don't look at me." And I had a lot of ego. I had a lot of ego in that attachment. The day after I got back from my vacation, there was a whole bunch of drama that had ensued at work. And I was looking at this whole situation from a bird's eye view instead of trying to get my feelings attached. And I just thought something that my friend, who's now my partner, told me at the time was, I want to be in a space where I'm celebrated, not tolerated. And I just like am looking at this situation, hearing those words reverberate through my skull. And I remember calling my mom and telling my mom, I got to leave my job. I got to leave my job because if I don't, I think I'm going to get fired. And my mom said, well, you know, you've kind of made a life for yourself where you can do anything you want. Like, what do you want to do? And by this time, I was going through my second divorce. I was so lost. I didn't feel capable of many things because I had really relied on my partner and my relationship and my marriage to help me through a lot of the things that I couldn't self-regulate and bring myself to go through on my own. And so at night, I'd spend a lot of time just getting drunk and swinging around this little pole that I had set up in my house that somebody dropped off at my house years ago. And I'd touch it maybe once every 6 months. And I just remember in those moments when I'd be drunk in this apartment by myself, that was the only time that I felt free to express ever. It was the only time that I felt safe to embody sensuality, especially as somebody who is biracial. I feel like people who are not BIPOC have a lot more freedom to express themselves in sensual ways without being judged. And I could just like be free to be this person, whoever I wanted to be. And I've always loved dressing up. I've always loved costumes. I've always loved make-believe. And I told my mom in that moment, I think I want to be a stripper. And I was so scared to tell her because my mom tried so hard, like my entire life, to keep me away from anything sensual, anything sexual. She was so afraid I'd get pregnant young because she was a single mom. And there's just a lot of fear around my body and the exploitation of my body as a parent in general, but also because my mother had experienced a lot of things in her past that had caused her a lot of harm. And so I heard silence on that phone for what felt like years. And then I heard her take a deep breath and she goes, "Can I make your clothes?"
Yes,
And I
mom.
just right? Like I just about cried, it was like the last thing I ever expected my mom to say. And it felt like the first moment for me in my life where I had unwavering support, unwavering support. And I told her, like, I don't know how much of them I'll be wearing, but absolutely. And yeah, I walked into that club. By this time, I was like 27 years old, 26 years old, sometime around then. So I knew a little bit about myself. I'd already experienced 2 divorces, 2 marriages, the loss of my brother and sister, traveling and moving because of the military so often. And I very easily saw how any person in that environment can get wrapped up in the wrong things. And because I had known a little bit about myself, also because men didn't impress me, money didn't impress me, I had all of those things before I even started doing that. It was like very easy for me to avoid a lot of the potential traumas and troubles that can come with dancing in the club. And it's not to say I avoided them all. I had stalkers. I had people try to sexually assault me all the time, but I just knew myself and I knew how to read energy well enough where I kept myself away from a lot of that. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And so I'm giving you a long-winded answer, but to really answer your question, the thing that really helped me overcome a lot of those attachments was recognizing that because of my experience and having so much happen in such a short time in my life, because of the abundance I knew I could attract into my life. It took time, but it became easier and easier for me over time to release those attachments to things because I knew I could attract even better things in my life. And till this day, I never look back at the things that I experienced and say, damn, I wish I still had that. I look back at them every single time and think, wow, I've fucking leveled up. Excuse my language. I've just leveled up, and like I said, it hasn't been without hardship. And I'm really positive that every time I make a step, it's always in the right direction because I am just held by the universe so, so well. And so it really comes from a place of being willing to trust and surrender in that vision that I have for myself and the consistency of the universe just showing up for me every single time, you know. And I think that's really where it stems from.
Now Peru is starting to sound like a liberation tour in a sense, where
Oh,
like it's like you've taken everything that you've been through, you've overcome a lot of those obstacles. You literally did so much, like in a condensed amount of time that it takes like the average person 30 years to like achieve. And it's kind of like you were just kind of like in that bubble of just a lot happening, and you
yeah,
just bust that bubble and said, you know what, Peru's going to be the place where I'm just going to live unapologetically, continue this journey of self discovery, but do it in a way that's personal to you without other people kind of like coming in and adding their opinions and their mindset to how you want to live.
absolutely. You know, I think we all go through many phases or experiences like that in our life, right? Like we all have many, we all live many lives, and like within this one human is a million people that have experienced the world. You know, I've been a housewife, I've been a hoe, I've been a anything that you can name. You know, I've been in the military, I've been an ice cream scooper at Cold Stone. Like I've felt like I'm just one skin encapsulated consciousness that has experienced so many things we all have. And because I grew up so quickly, because of being married, I understood what it meant to really tie yourself to someone else's idea of what living really means. My first ex-husband and I are nothing alike. You know, my second ex-husband and I are not really that much alike either. But my second ex-husband, despite our differences, you know, um, he really taught me a lot about how to self-soothe, how to show up for myself, how to take control over my life. And I didn't learn this lesson from him until we started going through our divorce. And, you know, till this day, like I said, we're not married anymore, but I have so much gratitude and respect for our relationship, respect for him, nothing but love for him. You know, he's getting ready to be remarried soon. And like, I really, truly have this deep desire to see him be free and happy in his life, which is why we had to make the decision not to be married anymore. Because we just wanted different things. And in that experience, I learned that it's so important for us to envision our own path and find out like what is really calling for us, you know, because there's so much information coming in from the world all around us through our phones, through social media, through the TV, through the news. It's really hard to not be impacted by that and have your perspective shifted. And so for me, I have to limit myself. Like, even though I'm on social media, you know, people say I share a lot about my life. Like, my average screen time spent on Instagram is 5.5 to 6 hours a week. I don't spend that much time on social media. I don't spend a lot of time scrolling. And it's because for me, it's very important for me to sit with myself and envision my own path and the things that I desire, the things that I feel. And so when I started shifting and deciding to leave, it was a long time coming. You know, like I said, my partner and I, we've been planning this experience for a while. But even going further back than that, in both my marriages, before this, before high school, before, you know, the military, I remember as a kid, I lived in Alaska and we lived near a lake that had float planes. And we lived near the airport, and I would see these float planes fly by, and I would just like scream, like, take me with you. Because I just knew my whole life that like I was not meant to be in one place forever. And so, you know, when I started going through these experiences, I'm like, who was I before the world started telling me who I should be?
Mm.
And part of that was like, I was somebody who wanted to go wherever, just go. I just want to go. I want to go see things. I want to go meet people. I want to figure out, who are these people? What do they want? How are they living their life? And how can I utilize their experience as a mirror to shape my own? And so Peru for me has also been, I've felt so gracious, I've felt so much gratitude for this experience, because being here in the Sacred Valley of the Incas, where people, I'm looking across the valley at this mountain right now that people have literally built homes on top of. I can't breathe walking around this like flat ground. It's hard for me to breathe here. And people have worked hard to build homes on top of this mountain. Like, living in this valley has taught me that it's up to us to really get what we want. And I feel a lot of gratitude for being able to be in this space, to be accepted by these people, and for them to support me in following my own dream, because this dream feels more like the American dream than the American dream did. In the American dream, I was overworked, underpaid, highly stressed, not nourishing my body because I was eating the wrong things, because of all these things, you know. And I remember sitting on my floor of my home that I spent $500,000 on, thinking to myself, like, there's got to be a different way, an easier way. There has got to be something that is more meaningful than paying to suffer. Because a lot of us are doing that in America. A lot of us are suffering, and we're not actually acknowledging that. And so we stay in this container of suffering and thinking like, oh, I have to do these things because it feels like the American dream, you know? And now I live in a house that's half to a quarter of the size that I lived in before. I don't get consistent hot water. There's thousands of flies in my house all the time. You know, I have to be mindful of where I go buy food because the meat markets are open air markets. You know, it's like just being more cognizant of how we live, because we don't have the accessibility that we did in America. But I'm so much happier because I recognize that the happiness wasn't attached to the things. It wasn't attached to the status, you know, and what really makes me happy is to show up for myself and my community. And this place has given me the freedom to explore who I was before I was told who to be. Yeah.
I had to sit back on that one. Okay. I'm curious because how long have y'all been in Peru now? I mean, it's been but like a few months.
Today is February 6th. So today actually is our official 2-month anniversary being in Peru. And it's like,
Okay.
most people take 2 years to really grow, you know, to really fully digest and let us experience sit with them. But it's like,
Um,
as soon as you step into this land, aside from not being able to breathe, everything else feels so much more easeful. You know, I'm sitting at 9,000 feet above sea level right now, you know, and aside from the like difficulty with altitude, it's like the space just opens up. Here, you know, they say like if you go to Jamaica or if you go somewhere that's an island, they have island time. Here we have Peruvian time, you know, and it's very much its own thing. Nothing happens on time. You know, you could have somebody, we had a broken sink in our bathroom for over a week and a half. And like the plumber came and checked it out. And he was like, yeah, I'll be back tomorrow because I need some other tools. He never texted, never showed up, you know, and that's just like something you have to adjust to being the norm here, because nobody is here stressing out about trying to get something done. They're going to do it when it's suitable for their life and their well-being. And as a person receiving that, it's really challenging, especially when you're coming from America, you know, because in America, I could pay, first of all, if you live in an apartment and you're renting, you cannot have your plumbing messed up for more than 2 or 3 days before it's actually a legal issue, you know?
oh,
And
trust
so
me,
I'm
I
coming
know.
from,
That happened to me last year.
you know, so I'm coming from that mindset of like, wait a minute, I'm paying you to be here and you don't show up, you know? And And like I'm paying rent to live here, and like you just may never show up. The plumber might not show up. You might be without a sink, a toilet, whatever it is. But yeah, that was a real big adjustment for me at first, like not having hot water. We're used to just like you turn it on and it's hot. There's no waiting. Here, if you're lucky, you have a gas heater for your hot water. And if you're lucky, it works 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10. So yeah, coming from that mindset, um, it's like there's a mixed feelings about it, for sure. And it's definitely like shaped in a short time my perspective of what it means to have a good quality of living, you know. Because if I were to walk somebody through my home right now, most people from America would be like, I cannot do this. I cannot do this. I've seen more scorpions in this house than I can count. We don't have nets in our windows, so you can't open the windows without flies coming in and out. It's like little things like that we take for granted when we're back in the States. But I can't tell you also how beautiful it's been to also say, like, I'm actually okay with the flies in the house. They're not hurting me. They're not bothering me. The scorpions, put it outside. Like back home, I would have been like, stop that thing. And yeah, it's just like a beautiful shift in such a short time. And having the time to sit down and think about that really helps, because there's not a lot to do here. I live in a town of less than 10,000 people, you know. So if you don't like sitting with yourself, do not come to this valley. Do not come to this place, because you will have a rude awakening, and you have to be willing to sit with yourself here. So it's been a short time, but it's been a lot of change in that time.
How are y'all collaborating to just transform your space into home? Like how are y'all adjusting with that?
When you say y'all, do you mean my partner and I, or the like
Yeah.
landlord and I?
No more like
Yeah.
you and your partner, and then you also have 3 dogs. So like I have questions as far as like um Seattle is drastically different from Peru.
For real. Yeah.
Um you kind of went from one area where um there aren't a lot of people of color, and then you're in Peru now, and there
Mhm.
are
There's a lot of people of color.
a lot of people of color,
Yeah.
but like the, the
It's
culture is
different.
different. Um, I don't even know if like if is there even like a community out there that embraces the type of work that you do. Um, like what are
Yeah.
some of the ways in which you've tried to like make your new place like home? Like, of course you got a roof over your head, but like, people say home is
Yeah.
where the heart is, and home is where their community is, and home is whatever
Yeah.
you really make it. But like, how are y'all like settling? How's that been going?
That's been that's been a really interesting experience for us. So as well, when we first started planning this transition, um, we paid quite a bit more than most people pay to live in the home that we're in now. And the reason we paid more, was for the sense of ease, because we had never been here. We had never been to Peru, period. And so we didn't know what was a good area, where we wanted to be, those kinds of things that you typically want to check out before you move to a new place. And we were lucky, like I said, enough to have community here. We have our friend Brother B, and he opened us up to so many other people in this area. And one of the individuals that he introduced us to is the person that manages our home. And so, we got here and we expected that our house would be done the day after our retreat finished, or the day before our retreat finished. Our house is still not finished. Okay, we're 2 months down the road. This is very common, in Peru. And if we were paying the typical amount that most people pay, it wouldn't be a problem, because most people pay, 4 to 700 USD to live in these homes, if they're not from here. The people that are from here, even less than that. And we were paying like almost triple that, and so for us, this came with a lot of tension because we were like, we are paying far more than people usually pay. And I had a lot of feelings about this because I did not want to contribute to the gentrification and the prices rising in this area. At the same time, I knew that there were certain things that we needed in our home to have a successful transition into land well. So that's been like a really interesting part for us. Like, you see, I don't have art on my walls. I don't have a lot of decorations right now because even to this day, like, we're not really sure if we want to stay in this space. And so my partner and I have had to make this place feel like home through our daily practices, and back in Washington, our daily practices, like, you wake up, you look at the sky before you look at a screen, and you spend time with your inner consciousness, with God, with the universe, with whatever you want to call it. You spend time being introspective and sharing gratitude with the world and your life. Then we take care of our responsibilities. We, take care of our dogs, make our food for the day, those kinds of things. And then we just plan out our day. And that has been super pertinent to our landing here because I recognize that the only place that's really ever felt like home for me is this body. I've moved so much in my life. Since I've been 18, I've moved like 22 times. Like, it's crazy. I've moved so much. And, my friend Savannah a while ago said that to me. The only place that's ever really felt like home for me is my body. And I'm like, gosh, this like resonates so deeply. And even that for me always hasn't felt like home because this body is ever changing. I've been overweight. I've been underweight. I've been all these different things. I've suffered with acne, like, all the things you go through in puberty. There's been times where my body didn't feel like a home. And so I've had to make peace with my spirit because that is the one place that for me has consistently felt safe to go. And so it starts with our practices, our personal practices. And again, that was also something for me that was really challenging because, if you come to this town, like I said, this is a town of less than 10,000 people that I live near and in. Near the town I live in has like even a fraction of that, maybe 700 to 1,000 people. It's 15 minutes down the road. And there's no dance studios here, let alone a pole fitness studio. Not a single one. The closest one that they have is in Lima, which is a 24-hour drive away from us.
Wow.
And yeah, and there's 3 studios in this entire country, and they're all in Lima. And, that's been challenging because I didn't have access to that community, but also simultaneously because of the necessary requirement to adjust to the level of altitude here, it's been really challenging for me to breathe, to just breathe. And because of that, I couldn't partake in my personal practice until just about like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah. And actually, 2 weeks ago was the first time that I got to set my pole up in a space that was safe enough for me to dance. And I could dance for like 30 to 45 seconds without feeling like I was having a near-death experience. Something that also like impacted that was I have seizures every now and then. And I didn't recognize this. This is not something that I thought about when I got ready to move, but the altitude can greatly impact your body's ability to function properly in general. But specifically for people who have seizures, any type of altitude above 2,500 meters can be really challenging. And we're sitting at 2,900 right here. So my first night in this area, I had my first week in this area, I had seizures like back to back a lot. And yeah, just to be safe, I had to really let my body adjust so that way that didn't keep happening. And so, part of it was that personal practice, which felt like a little bit of a challenge in my movement. I couldn't access that for a while. But the true thing that's really kept me comforted and held is just my relationship with myself, with God, with whatever you want to call it. which is within me, like that spiritual relationship. And again, being able to rely and trust that there's always something better ahead. It's been my saving grace in a time where this adjustment has actually felt like one of the more challenging parts of my life. Yeah. And also like having the right people around you. I'm so blessed to have the most incredible partner in the world. Like, I don't even know how I was lucky enough and how he was lucky enough for us to like be just divinely led to each other. We're both so supportive of one another, and he has seen the ebbs and flows that I have experienced going through this transition, and he has just shown up consistently as a solid rock, so that way I could be the one who was transforming and changing and all over the place emotionally. And he just has been so consistent in showing up and making space for that. And I feel like it's just one of the most powerful things that we can have, to have someone in our life, even more specifically, a partner in our life. And it doesn't have to be that, but if we're lucky enough to have that, it's such a blessing, because you have this person that helps you to see yourself, and having that mirror has also helped me to see where I've been spoiled, where I've been expectant of things, in a kind and gentle way, because I've also had people try to tell me about myself in a not so kind or gentle way. Like just a few weeks ago, I had more than one person say like I was spoiled. First of all, you're not going to tell me something I don't already know about myself. I know I'm spoiled because I spoil myself, not because anyone else spoils me. But one comment that I had to like receive and sit with for a while was somebody telling me like that I was experiencing a colonialist mindset, that I was like turning into a colonizer here, because I was expecting for the way I live in America to be the same as how I live here, and this came from me just sharing my expectation versus reality perspective in my story on Instagram. And I have a lot of respect for all people, no matter what their perspective is. But when this comment came in, it was just like thrown in such a way that, first of all, I wasn't even asking for anyone's opinion or advice. And so, like, it wasn't that I wasn't willing to receive. I did receive. And I also was not in a place where I understood that they couldn't see the full context of the situation. So the contrast of those two different ways of receiving messages is super instrumental in like how we grow as humans and how we progress as humans. And I'm really grateful for my partner just being able to like show up in that way. Yeah, my partner Trevor, at Just Like Trevor on Instagram, y'all. Low key shout out.
I know that's
he
right.
is instrumental in that.
I'm not gonna lie, I did some digging. I like yeah, definitely follow him too, because he has a pretty big yoga community. I really appreciate seeing Black men in yoga, and just like really have like that type of introspective like mindset of not only holding it in your practice, but being able to like think of it from like a transformative level, from like self identity. I think what y'all have going on is just great, feeding into each other to be able to have like that inner strength, and then using your practice to inspire others to do the same. So,
Thank you. Thank you. I
yeah, it's giving
appreciate
power
that.
couple. I love it.
I'm grateful for him. Yeah, it's, you know, like I said, it's so important to choose the right people to surround yourself with. Had I not been with him, that comment that I received, like, I'm sure you saw my post from yesterday. It was like that South Texas in me came out, and I was like, it's like, this is not who we are. And also like I have nothing but love for that person for actually showing up and saying that, even though I completely disagree with their perspective and how they see the situation. Like, I truly have nothing but love and respect for that individual, because I want anyone to feel empowered to say what they got to say. You know, it doesn't mean I'm going to agree with it. And quite frankly, the way that it was brought to me was in such a negative way that I was like, I can't even interact with this person anymore. Like, I have to unfollow them because that's not the type of energy I want in my life. But a different version of me would not have reacted that way, you know?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I'm really, truly grateful for him. And I think that that's become one of our most important values as a couple is just being willing to see each other happy and healthy, regardless of whether that means we're together or not. That's number one. And number two is showing up for ourselves and then our communities, because we understand that there are a lot of people in this world who really would love to be more vulnerable, more outspoken, more in touch with whatever parts of themselves they feel they have to hide away. And we are very unapologetically ourselves now, you know. And so I received that compliment. Thank you for that. It's very affirming for us to really continue on that mission, because yeah, it's individuals like you that we really want to show up for, you know, people that look like us, people that don't look like us but resonate with our cultural background, you know. And yeah, he's really made a name for himself in such a short time. I'm so proud of him for that too. Yeah. You guys should have a little kiki too, because I think you guys would really get along.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with
Yeah.
it. I'm with it. Yeah, I might have to have him hop on the podcast one time, talk about his experience too.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I have two more questions because I'm sure there are people who may listen to this podcast and they may be in a space where they want to maybe relocate um, for more of like wellness or mental health reasons, or they're kind of like struggling with being worked like a dog.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how America treats us. Capitalist
Yeah.
society is kind of like just work, 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 and oh, if you're lucky to make it to 70, you can retire, and maybe you can get enough money to maybe retire off of from the government each month if inflation doesn't like
Eat you up.
stand in the way. Yeah, of eating you up. Yeah. So like, what advice would you give someone who's struggling to break free from kind of like that restrictive cultural expectation, in order to be in a space of like, okay, I can move somewhere else and get what I want, but how? Like, people are just kind of like
Mhm.
stuck right now. And they're kind of stuck to what they were molded to believe,
Yes.
and kind of stuck in that mindset of I do have to work. I need more money. I need to go somewhere where I'm making more money. Um, and I mean, if you think about it like that, a lot of countries, they don't
You're not gonna
have,
make more. You're not
yeah,
gonna make more in most places, you know. Hong Kong. So, Hong Kong, maybe, you know, but it's expensive to live there. It's like the most expensive city in the world, I think. Um, yeah, to answer your question, the first thing I would tell people is to look at your ancestors. Look
Mhm.
at your ancestors, and I want you to notice the decisions that they've made throughout their life, why they've made those decisions, and what outcome has it led to for them. Because chances are a lot of the patterns that you're experiencing in your thought have been passed down to you through your ancestors. You know, your parents teach you about work ethic, they teach you how to work hard. They teach you, oh, you got to work so hard for your money. Like, maybe no. I'm retired at 31, okay? I did my years of working hard. I'm not retired off of like the military didn't retire me. I got out after the military. I got out after 2, 3 years, you know. I did that season of working hard. And there is value in that. But I would tell you to look at how your ancestors think and connect with them, ask them questions, really connect with them. Like something especially important for all people, but like in the Black community is having this deep reverence for our ancestors. And a lot of that value has been stripped away from us through a lot of different situations. But it's so important to ask the people around us in our family about themselves, because you can utilize that as a mirror to see why you're making the decisions that you're making. And then I want you to ask yourself next, after you talk with them, is that the path I want? Because a lot of times, if you're thinking the same way that they're thinking, you're going to experience the same things that they're experiencing. And like, be real with yourself, because honestly, there was a lot of times in my life where I was like, I'm nothing like my mom. I'm nothing like my dad. I'm nothing like my grandma. Like, girl, you are a spitting image of these people that have surrounded you and kept you and held you for your whole life. No matter how far away from my mom I have tried to move, okay? And my mom's sitting downstairs right now. My mom just flew in a couple weeks ago. She was like, I got to see what my baby's up to. And so, being here has been a huge mirror for me to see that we are the same. Her and I are the same. We have different choices that we've made, and our paths vary in certain ways, but I am her kid, and her ways of thinking, her ways of experiencing life have impacted me. And so when I really sat with that information of who am I being taught by and what am I being taught, the next question I had to ask myself was like, do I want the same things? And the answer was no. The answer was like, I don't want all the same things as her. I want something different. And that, like, people say like the people you look up to are really important, and they are. But the people that you don't want to be like are way more impactful in your life than the people that you do want to be like. And for a long time, I didn't want to be like my mom, because I thought she had shut herself down for the sake of marriage and children. I thought she had closed herself off, and I really didn't see that the path that she chose was the choice that she wanted in those moments. It may have led to outcomes that she didn't necessarily want at times, but yeah, it helped me to make different decisions and to choose myself, because I had seen so much of her giving herself away to other people for other things and then resenting them and herself for it. And so, speaking with your family, understanding how they think without judgment too, because that's really important, right? Like, for a long time, I had so much judgment towards her, towards my dad, towards my grandmother, my sister, my brother. And now I can just see it without judging it, and understand that that's their experience, not mine. And then the last thing I'll say about that is, I think it's also really important to remember to show up for yourself before anyone else, because you cannot give out of an empty cup. You just can't. So if you make decisions that show up for you first, and that's something that's on your radar, it will be something that you follow through with.
I feel like he's speaking to like the younger version of myself right now. Um, for real. Because I felt like the biggest way that I could show up for myself was to move out of
Yeah.
the area that I was in. And I learned so much about myself and really about my family in the process. And um, someone spoke like kind of like on me, not like to me, but like on me, but just said like, oh, just like kind of prophesying like, oh, like she's gonna break generational curses, like for the family, break generational curses, like me breaking at a
Yes.
young age, saying that I was gonna do that. Man, look, I might just break the whole generation because I'm not having kids. And that was one thing that was just kind of
Yeah.
like I was brought up, not like
To
my
have
mom didn't
children.
urge me to do that, but like I would have conversations with her about I don't see myself doing that. And she's just like, oh, what if you find a partner and they want kids? Well, I guess that won't be my partner.
Right.
They like
That part.
just things like that. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
and just having a
Yeah.
conversation and explaining, like,
I
I
think
see
also
where you're
too
coming
part
from,
of
but no, not me.
right.
Not gonna do that.
And like I think part of that is also just being willing to ask them what they not what they want for you, but what were the consequences of them not following through on the things they wanted for themselves.
Ooh,
Because when you start to ask them those questions, they get put in the driver's seat of their own experience again, and they're reminded of what it means to not show up for self first. And when you start to frame those things, like a lot of times people stay where they're at because of family. You know, this move was much easier for me because I've already been away from my family since 2011, 2012, you know. And so, like, leaving, my mom didn't love it, but I'm actually equal distance from her now than like, basically at 25, between 25 and 3,000 miles. Same with me being in Washington, you know. And so it's like there's very little difference. But a lot of times when we start to move away from our families, like, oh, what about us? What about you? Love you, and I can come and visit, and also you can come and visit too,
that
you
part.
know. And that's been really instrumental for me because it's like, you know, when I first left, it's like, when are you coming home? When are you coming home? I'm not coming back all the time. I left because I want to see something new and because I want for you to come explore something new. So now my mom, all the dreams that my mom had about traveling the world and this and that, she never got until I did the things that I wanted to do. Now my mom's out here in Peru, okay, riding on mopeds and going to the mercado and seeing the open air meat markets where she's like, wow, I can't believe it's like this, you know? And so it's like, that's beautiful for me to see my mom finally get to live her dream through my experience, you know? And when you frame it that way for your family, it's hard for them to say no. It's really hard for them to say no. Yeah.
Very last question. If you can speak to your past self before you moved to Peru, what wisdom would you share to that version of yourself? You could speak to like the lessons you learned like throughout the process of like relocating, but if you could speak on just like courage and um, self-discovery, just things that you've noticed that you would tell the version of yourself that was in Seattle. I'm sure that would help a lot of people.
Yeah. If I were to talk to that version of me 3 months ago, 3 months ago,
I'm sure it was
I
scary
would
in a sense, right? Like just taking that
kind of,
leap.
yeah, I would honestly say, you know, um, the, the things that you achieve and the quality of the outcome is dependent on how much courage you're willing to have. And also, like, do not be afraid to let everything go. Because as long as you have this body and air in your lungs, you can rebuild just about anything. You know, you can rebuild just about anything. You know, I've seen, and like, especially being here, it's like you see people who have nothing, but they have everything, you know, and just don't be afraid to shed. Do not be afraid to shed because you're going to have to do it anyway. You can either do it with resistance or you can do it with ease. Let everything go. And that includes the spiritual, the ego, the physical stuff. You know, I came here with 3 suitcases. I probably could have came here with less. Let it
Mm.
all go because you don't need it. You just don't need it. And as long as you're willing to let those things go, when we sit here like this all the time, you have no room to receive. So open up a little bit and let it go. So you have room to receive all the blessings that are meant for you, that are really meant for you, and truly aligned with where you're at in that season. You know, you're going to change every single day. I'm a whole different person than I was 2 months ago. I'm a whole different person than I was 10 minutes ago, you know? And just don't be willing to settle for like what you know for the sake of comfort because this comfort can be just as scary as the unknown. You want to sit in the same suffering because you know it? That doesn't feel right. Like, try some new suffering so you can grow at least, you know? Try some new suffering. And yeah, don't be attached. Don't be attached.
Thank you so much, Kiori. I really appreciate you being on this podcast today. Um, those who are listening, y'all know the deal. I have all her information in the description of this episode, how you can reach out. If you want to know more about how she relocated with her 3 dogs and the process
AKA
of
broke
actually
roommates.
moving. What was that?
I said AKA broke roommates.
Oh, broke roommates. Yes, the broke roommates. Yeah, y'all just
Yes.
got to get in touch with her about that. I know this is called the Relocate Podcast, for those who are kind of new to this, but I think of more of like the identity and self transformative aspect of relocating, and not so much of the logistics. So sorry if that's what you were expecting, but I definitely encourage you to reach out to Kiori, and if you want to know more about how she's been able to transition with her practice, definitely follow her, get to know her and her practice and how she's been navigating that process, and um, some of her clips on social media about how she got into this. Like, she has a lot of great content out there. So I mean, that's how I found you, because of your
Yes.
content. So, and that was like
Yes.
months ago before I even knew you were leaving. So
Yeah.
when that happened, I was like, whoa, wait, hold up.
We gotta
Wait a minute
talk.
now. Everybody gone, like, hold on. I was trying to come back to Seattle. Like, I was going to do a solo trip. I wanted to do
Yes.
yoga. I wanted to do pole. Like, I wanted to go to the seafood market, eat all the seafood by myself. Because,
Girl,
girl,
you gonna get that seafood.
trying
Do
to do
it.
that
Do it
with,
anyway.
yes,
Do it
like trying to do
anyway.
that with like 7 people with me, and everyone wanting to like do their own thing and experience different things. I was like, okay, this is cool, but I want to come back and do the solo trip. But y'all are in Peru now, so I'm just gonna have to
Yeah.
follow y'all even more
Yes.
and
Come
see how I
out
can get.
here. Look, you equal distance. It's actually cheaper to get from Austin to Peru than it is to get from Austin to Seattle. I was looking at flights the other day because I'm about to go to Texas in a couple weeks. So yes, like come out. There's places out here for you. There's space out here for you. Bring oxygen because Lord help us all. But thank you so much. It's been such a blessing to just have that space opened up for me to share. I really appreciate that. And yeah, people know what to do if they have questions. Follow me, ask the boy. I'm an open book. I have nothing to hide from this world.
Yes. And
All
thank you
right,
all
friend.
so much for tuning in and to the Relocate podcast. Make sure you follow, like, share, subscribe, not only to my content, but to Kiori's content as well. Tune in for new episodes every Wednesday, and that's on Central Standard Time, because I know now there's people in other countries listening in. So yeah, thank y'all. I appreciate it. All right. Have a great day.